every year we get to talk about Icinga, and it's usually done by this man because he knows a little bit about Icinga. However, this year when he submitted a talk, it wasn't actually just about Icinga, it was actually about a community, and I thought, good, that's a keynote talk. Excellent, that's that one sorted, don't need to think about another keynote. Got another keynote talk because that's a keynote talk, and that's what Bernd is doing, his first keynote, I think, at FLOSS?
Yeah.
Yeah, first keynote
Absolutely.
at FLOSS, so please, our very good speaker and our new sponsor.
Thank you very much. Thanks so much for coming out of the bed after that beer night yesterday. I talk about open source communities, so a little bit my experience. I don't talk about technical stuff like Mark mentioned. So giving you a short introduction if you don't know me. My name is Bernd. I'm working for a German service company named Netways, and I'm also working in the Icinga project. You can find me on Twitter if you want to get hashes. So I switched from German to English, so it's half-half. So just to get an idea, who has no idea what Icinga is, which could potentially be? Okay, so anyone knows what Icinga is? Just to give you perhaps a little bit of an idea. Anyway, I have no time to change the slides if you know it. So what Icinga is, it's just in 3 slides. We monitor stuff and figure out if it's available, if the performance is going to be like expected. We're gathering metrics. Means we don't store it, but we just forward it to Graphite, InfluxDB, or all the other hot stuff out there. And in case something goes wrong, we do the alerting. And hopefully your ops guy doesn't look like this guy, but could be. Theoretically. So this is what we do. So like setting the foundation, what a community is, so there's perhaps a different understanding, but it's probably my understanding. I think the most important thing for a community is that they are kind of social units which have common values. Whatever values they are, independent from tech or not tech, that they have something in common, which is the foundation for doing something together. It's important to know that a community usually is controlled by the people, not by the leader. Means the people working and doing work in a community probably decide where it's going to. Communities very often look very different from the inside and the outside. I mean, sometimes it looks from the outside, everything is happy, and inside there's hard fighting, or vice versa. So it's always worth to really figure out how the community works inside to learn about the structure, probably if you have your own project. And it also very fits good to a company or to a team. As a social unit, the same methods are kind of the foundation of working together. A different thing is that a community is not a society, because a society is usually based on what is the best, which makes sense, and there's no reason that a community has to make sense in any way. Means perhaps it's just fun. That's the only sense or foundation a community has. Usually a society should have some real stuff to do, and they should be, it should make sense what they do. So what the sense of a community? So there are kind of 4 points. So number 1 is like a valuable membership. So if somebody is working in an open source project or is working in whatever group, it must be really a valuable membership. So he must feel himself or herself to be really a part of it. The feeling of having influence. I mean, having influence is really more than a feeling, than a fact, because some people don't have so much influence, but they feel they are a big part of it, and that's really important that they have a chance to have influence, but you need to give people the feeling that they really have to. Also, there's more people are working in a group, then the influence is reduced by any other people coming in, because you have different opinions and stuff, especially if you talk about tech or what programming language should we choose. Then you figure out very quick that the influence is very low. But this is important. So fulfillment of needs in your product or in your group, that the thing you matter, the thing which are matter to you, which are important to you, that you can be part of it. And kind of a shared emotional connection as well. Means if people spend their spare time somewhere, they must have something more than just the technical foundation. It must be like they like each other, they found friends, and really have kind of connection with the other people, which motivate them to do more in a community. So how is the creation process? So how is the community created? There are different ways to do it. So the simplest thing is, so you have an idea, put it on the bulletin board. Different version is for the French people, or of course we are in England, you can do that as well. So that's the easiest way to say, okay, I have an idea, somebody's interested in working with me on a specific topic. In the tech world, it could be more than this. So you have a great idea, Saturday night, you code some stuff and say, okay, I put it on GitHub. Perhaps somebody else finds it interesting. If you're a little bit more lazy, you can do a git clone and take some other stuff and modify it or build on top of it. And that is what we did on Icinga. So a couple of years ago, it was May 2009, we just forked out the Nagios code base. At that point, we were not happy with the development from the Nagios project. We are still not happy with it, but now we don't care. We took the code base from Nagios at that point, and it was hard to find the right name for it, which was the biggest process in that forking the project was finding a name and finding a free domain and Twitter account and all that stuff. And since that, we came up with Icinga was a good idea, we thought, because at this time Ubuntu was also coming up, and Icinga is Zulu language and means like standing on a hill and watching out for animals to hunt. That's the idea, what Icinga means. And we had a hard decision to, must the name be something which makes technical sense, meaning OpenMon or something with the name which is clear what it is. And then with Icinga, it was vice versa, means nobody had an idea what it is, so we had to explain everyone, what is Icinga, what is Icinga. But after some time, so if you ever are in that moment to figure out what the best name is, we figured out that if you're at the point where the brand starts to be recognized, then it's better to have something not really product related. So if you have a brand, it's better to use perhaps a non-technical name for your project. Anyway, like I said, finding a free domain was also not so easy. Okay, so a community building process. So at that point, when we just talking about my experience here in the project, when we forked out Nagios, we were a group about, I would say 9 people or so, or 10 people say, okay, that's a good idea. After we did it, then we were just a group of 5 people because 4 dropped out because there was a heavy shitstorm on Twitter. Also, Ethan was very active, mailing some other people that is not fair, and it was not easy. Also, the customers we had were not so super happy. That what? We installed Nagios last week and now you don't have it anymore. So it was not easy at the beginning. I mean, for a lot of people, it was too much pressure, and they dropped out. But for the rest of us, we were full of enthusiasm. At the moment we started the website, we just had the name. We had no single line of code. So we just said, okay, we are here, and we will release soon, but we had nothing. And then we went to that community building process. And there's a book by Scott Beck talking about that, what a community building process could be or usually is. And there are kind of different stages you are going through. So he describes 4 stages of a community building. Means the first thing is a pseudo community, means at the beginning everything is great. Everything is amazing, you have an idea, you're full of energy, let's do it, okay, whatever it takes, we're gonna make it. But after some time, it changes a little bit because people are not happy with specific decisions, they are not happy with the progress you make, they are perhaps feel too much pressure coming from the outside, and then you have to reorganize yourself. And it's really comparable to a relationship. So remember your first love, the first week everything is super great, you don't see any negatives in your partner, everything is super fancy, but after some time, depends on your partner, perhaps 2 days, 2 years, 2 months, you say, okay, something I'm not happy with. So it's a hard moment. Perhaps you quit, or perhaps you can come over it. But these things is the same what happens in a group. Means, bless you. Means it's important to go from it, everything is great, to perhaps not everything is great, but it's like it is. And it ends up that you start to accept things you don't like, because you figure out that it's okay if you work in a group, some people don't agree to you, and people see differently. And that stage is very important, that you come to that, because it ends up in a really true community. Means in a true community, you usually in a group of people, you have people you disagree with, but you can still work with them. And it makes you, at the end, it makes you really stronger. If you if you came over that point of that chaos and empathy, that you really work together, and that 4 stages are a thing which are really important, and is usually a process which works in every team. Somebody has about these group building process. Somebody knows that? That's a pretty similar thing like group building theories, like forming, storming, norming. There's another one added later on. This morning means regrouping, but it's kind of the same process in a team building at work, like in a community. So you come together, then you figure out that not everything is working so good. You have your common rules, and then you are performing after a specific time when you really found the different values in your team. Working in a community, let's say from 2 perspectives, as a member and as a leader. So the first important thing is to know that in a community, everybody is a member. Independent from if she or he is doing a lot or not, that everybody is a part of a group. Especially in an open source project, you have people, they're coming up, they are very active for 3 months, they are submitting patches and code every night, and then they're off. They are gone. And after half a year, you know, are they still alive? And then you call them and say, what's up? You don't have time, or is something wrong? No, I have a girlfriend now, I don't have time. And this is a real life example. I say, okay, perhaps you can come back in 2 years if you don't come over that chaos stage. We'll see you again. But this is what usually is an open source project. You can make hard deadlines on somebody, say you have to do it, because people come in, drop out, and you have a lot of, you have to be flexible and deal with that manner that people don't have time for your project. But everybody is a valuable member as long as somebody say, okay, I'm out. I'm not able to do anything. I liked it here, but I found something new. And we also had that people say it was a good time, but now I'm off, I don't have time, I have kids, I have family, or I'm working in another open source project now, bye-bye, which is okay. So everything has its time. Another important thing is that you always have to disagree with ideas. Means at the beginning, we had very, very intensive discussions. Every weekend, we had a Mumble thing as a replacement for Skype. We figured out that most of the time we figured out with sound card drivers and stuff like that. So we had an hourly talk, and 50 minutes we spent in that everybody was online. But at the beginning, sometimes it was hard balancing disagreement with people and the ideas. But this is very important as a member, that if you're not good with something, if you don't like a decision, that you talk about the decision and not about the people. So don't disagree with them, because you should do so. Change your perspective. So as a member of a community, it's important to see what others people think. So why do they come up with a specific idea, or why do they have a problem with? So you try to be not a quick, sometimes a quick decision on somebody is not so good. So really try to get into a perspective of another person, if you can, for a longer period, and figure out how he thinks, because this helps you sometimes to really understand why he's fighting for a specific topic which seems very unimportant to you for such a long time. And some people coming up with things every week. So I thought I talked to you already this week, and for you it's very unimportant, but for them it's very important. And there it's really important to take their perspective to understand it. Take care of the next generation. Means always bring new people to your community, to your project, because like I said before, people will drop out because they don't have time. At some point we will all die. So make sure that your group is not aging. Everyone together, like you're all young hipsters, and in 20 years you're old farts, and no young people are in the project, then you have a problem. It's the same then in the company. When I started in my company, we have, I think we have an age on average with 24. Now we are 33, and it's still kind of young, I would say, in average. And now I figured out we are 53 people right now. If we add every year 5 people in the age of 19, our average age in 10 years will be 35 years. Means we're getting older, and if you start with a young project, then it's really hard to put that average age down. I hope you can get my idea on that. So aging together could be fun, but it's also a problem if you don't bring new people in your project. Be as flexible as possible. So don't stuck on a specific thing. I'm only doing this. as a community member is sometimes hard, because sometimes you need people to do documentation perhaps, or testing or whatever. So as a member, try to be flexible and try to help where help is needed, and don't stuck on your, I'm only doing C++ code and anything else I don't care. So if you would like to be a valuable member, it's good for your team, it's good for your community that you're flexible. Don't be a red shirt means, okay, first don't die, but it's also important that you are making yourself a valuable member. So try to be visible. Don't try to be somebody. So get your voice out. Let's say place your points, your arguments. So try to be valuable and visible to the others in the community, that they can also see you as a member and not somebody on the mailing list which they never talk to. Working in a community as a lead. So I know I thought that probably the control is done by the people, not through leaders. Anyway, every kind of bigger group or community has a leader, sometimes elected or sometimes found through a natural process, or perhaps he's the founder or whatever. But usually you have somebody or a group of people which are leading the group. I think the biggest job you have to do is maintain the balance between the strong and the weak. You always have these loud people, and you always have the people who are sitting not so aggressive or have their positions, but they don't tell them so loud. So important as a leader is that everybody has a chance to probably say what's going on, his opinions, and this is something a leader in a project or a community lead has to do. That you balance let's say, balance the power between the strong and the weak people in the project. Take care of the internal culture. So every team, every community has their culture. Sometimes perhaps it doesn't make sense, but if that's the team culture, try to keep on with it. So do your stuff and try to keep on with it, because that is for if you go for a longer period, especially if you start a project, like I said, everything is like super fun and you're full of energy, but it's super easy to start a project, but running a project over years is very hard, because people start to complain. I come to that point later. And therefore, it's really important that you take care of your internal culture. Don't be a control freak. And this is a thing I had to work every day, because that kills innovation and kills people. I'm a control freak, I'm sorry. So step back from time to time and say, okay, I think it's not the best way to do it, but do it this way. Because if you're over controlling people, they don't stop innovating, they don't do anything, and say everything I do it's wrong anyway, so I don't do anything. And that's something, if you have that in you, being a control freak, then perhaps think about yourself. Let other people make their mistakes and see where it's going. Another thing is being on time, which makes me crazy. So if we have an appointment at whatever time, then you figure that some people coming up 50, 55, 45 minutes late and say, oh, I'm in time. And you say, what? No, you're not in time. You're 45 minutes late, but yeah, it's still kind of 8. So the feeling of being in time is different depending on your culture. And this is something you have to accept, that people work differently. So of course you should take care that you don't waste the time because somebody's dropping in an hour earlier or later. But you have to deal with it, that other people think different about being in time, doing something absolutely to a point. That's a cultural thing, and you have to deal with that. You have to talk to them to understand it. Accept other people's culture. Yeah, this is what I said. Means you have to deal with what they are doing, how they work. Perhaps they take a long break in the afternoon because this is what they do, and then they start working again at 6, or it's usual that they come to a meeting half an hour later. Perhaps you can try to push them a little bit, but usually it's hard to change people, especially if they are getting older. It's even harder to change them. Couple of things for community maintenance. So first of all is talk. So I think the most important thing for managing a community is you have to talk to your people. By hangout, by phone, whatever you can do. You have to be transparent, means your decision process, especially if you are in a bigger group. Sometimes smaller groups meet and make decisions on how they go with a specific topic into the future. So try to write it down, that also people perhaps which are inactive for a couple of months because they don't have time, have a chance to keep up with. It's often a problem that people don't have time for a period and would like to come back. They have no idea what's going on in the project. And if they don't find a way to ask somebody or can read it somewhere, what happened, what has been done, besides having a GitHub statistic, it's important that they can follow up with. Measure progress if you can. Means also if your community members doing work, try to put them on front. So if you have a blog post, let them write a blog post or mention valuable members for a specific work they do, because it's sometimes the biggest thing you can give to somebody is a thank you, and show it to the others, say, this person has done great work in our project, and this is really important for them. And I know a lot of people get most of the motivation out of that somebody says, thank you, you did a great job. It's much more important than money or something else. It's like giving them a view, make them visible, that others can see what they have done for the project. Meet as much as you can. It's usually depending on where you are, and if you're an international project, it costs a lot of money. In our case, most of us live in Europe, but we also have people overseas in the United States, or ASAF, which is in Israel and England and everywhere. But we also have a chance to meet somewhere at a conference, and we try to do so. And for me personally, I'm still an old remote person. The best thing you can have is having a chat with a coffee, talk to somebody. No tool, no Hangout, no Skype can replace that to meet somebody in person. So if you have a chance to do it, do it. The technical stuff. When we started the project, the first thing we had, okay, we need a website. What can we do? And somebody came up and say, okay, let's do typo 3. And I said, no, please not, because when we start with typo 3, which I love it in some way, but it will took us 6 months to create the website template until we're ready. And this is something which is at the beginning consumed so much time in our project, talking about the technical decisions. So what tool we're using, what ticketing system we're using. So we're using, perhaps internally, we're using a ticketing system named RT. We had various communication platforms. Like I said, we started with some Mumble service. Now we're not using it anymore. We had a wiki, because everybody had a wiki. Then we thought a wiki must be a great idea. So we will shut it down because most of the content is outdated there. And also we started with an on-premise code repository. And we moved to GitHub, I would say 2 months ago or something like that, or a month ago, because we used the Redmine before and our own Git, and we were not unhappy with it. But at the end, we figured out all the users out there on the GitHub. So if you like it or not, it's kind of the de facto standard right now. Also, GitLab is fighting hard because they're offering free for public and private repos as well. But all the people are on GitHub. They're making the pull request there. And therefore, we decided, OK, let's move out from our on-premise to GitHub. We moved all the project repositories there. We still mirror everything internally, and we have a couple of private repos as well. But it was a decision based on where the users were, because they sent us in saying it would be great if you were on GitHub, because pull requests and all this stuff would be much easier. And therefore, we decided to migrate over. Anything else we have on-premise in the own data center. The website is built on WordPress. We heard yesterday, I think 52% was it? She's reading. 52%, right, is WordPress driven. We decided to do it as well. We bought a theme like 70 euros or something like that, and that's it. And we are pretty happy with it because we don't have multi-language support. And compared to what time we would like to invest in a typo 3, WordPress works very well for us. Right now, what we're doing is building a new build server, and we have done that, I think, 6 times. Because every time when we say it's finished now, then somebody can, perhaps we can change that. We also use Jenkins for that. I don't want to go too much into it, but I figured out that these things took us most of the time figuring out what technical stuff we use. Especially at the beginning, for some stuff, we discussed what programming language should we use. And this is really horrible because people come up with languages you don't know. You have to Google them. And usually these kind of people coming up, we should do that in whatever, Scala. They don't submit any line of code. But if you ask what programming language should we use, they have crazy ideas. We used, right now for the core, we used C++ because we needed something which is fast and we were able to do it. And for the website, we used PHP for a simple reason, because we were able we know how PHP works, or we think we know how PHP works. And we didn't have experience with Ruby or something else. So the decision process was not so hard here, because that was the only tools we were experienced in. But over time, we had a lot of, and these were also the most intensive and aggressive discussions we always had about technical stuff. But I right now would say we found ourselves, and it's working in some way. Another thing is dealing with failure. Dealing with failure is very important, because people will complain about everything. So after some time, so at the beginning we had, like I said, a lot of enthusiasm, and then people start, the documentation is not good, what is with this bug? This bug is here for years, why don't you put that in your code, whatever. So it's really something hard to learn, that people complain about things, and sometimes you think, hey, it's free software, if you don't like it, don't use it, use something else. But you have to deal with that as well. Means you have to deal with people complaining about stuff, and you have to learn also to make a cut and say, okay, I get your point, I have a different point of view, and you have to accept it. Accepting failure is important for a community, and especially also for organization, for a company. If you don't have a failure culture, you don't have innovation. Means accepting failures, dealing with it, and there is a very interesting book, perhaps somebody knows that, by Tim Rother about Toyota Kata. It's a culture of failure. So it's definitely something I would not say you should read, but perhaps you could read if you have space on your Kindle or whatever. It's a very good book, because they describe how they deal with failures. They measure, for example, if during the car building process, if the rate of failures occur are going to be reduced, they measure on that. Means they are not triggering on increasing error rate, they are triggering on decreasing error rate. Because they have a feeling if we have a decreasing error rate, it's not meaning the product is better, but people accept that it's not working. So the steering wheel is on the wrong side, okay, I can deal with it. Means they triggering and working on a different, they see failures differently from that, they looking for failures and they measure if failure rates decrease. And that is something you can also perhaps not adopt the same way, but thinking about that innovation is inside a good failure culture, and a failure process is very important. So if you have time, you can read that book. So I was too quick. Community rules, some of the rules I think you need. You need to try to be nice as long as possible. Means because some people, they make it very hard for you to be nice. But you should try, especially if it's public. So sometimes on Twitter or Facebook, people are ranting and complaining. Sometimes it's not easy. You definitely don't accept harassment. I mean, there's a line you should draw. Wherever it is, it depends on you. I mean, some people can handle more and some people can handle less. But at some point you say, okay, stop it here. I don't discuss with you anymore, or stop tweeting to us or writing stuff on Facebook, perhaps block that user. But you have to figure out where that line is. It depends on the people. And I would not say if somebody comes up with this, definitely there are kind of code of conducts and there are rules, but you have decided where you line between it's acceptable and unacceptable feedback and rants coming up. You have to do it. And talking about that, a code of conduct is very important. Means every conference and perhaps project or in every mall somewhere has kind of a code of conduct, how people should behave. And it's really important that you have that as a guideline. But it's also important that you taking care and really know what it is. Because what happens often that people kind of accept to a code of conduct, to be honest, they never read it. They have no clue what's inside, and nobody's enforcing that this code of conduct, especially as a leader in a project, is important in a community or at a conference, that somebody's here and say, okay, I'm enforcing it. You need moral courage for it. Means if something is not working good, somebody has to come up independent from if it's written down or if it's probably your own created code of conduct, that you have to enforce it and say to somebody, this is not okay. So let's draw a line here. We don't want to see that. Because the world is not super fancy. Means there are people complaining about anything that happens in the real world and that happens in your project. And people are not nice, lovely, and caring, but you can give it a try, and we can do our very best. And that's it for now. Thank you very much for listening. We have time for questions, right? Yes. If there are questions.
Yeah. How do you manage the? I mean, you've talked a lot about community, and that's great. But everybody in the community is there for some reason, and a number of them are there for commercial reasons. So, how do you handle the relationship between your commercial entity and its objectives? And whatever other objectives might be floating around in the community?
That's a good question. So at the beginning, I would say, if you talk about that, so the company I'm working with, we did about, I would say 50% of Icinga. And we had a guy, Michael Friedrich, he was doing the other 40%, and he worked for the University of Vienna. And at some day, he applied for a job and said, I would like to work with you. And since we left Michael, and at one hand we are happy that he is working for us, we had the decision where, what will the community think if we hire somebody who is working with our project but now is somewhere else, and we put everything to our company? We decided we should do it, and also Michael decided to do it. Means then said, I would say 90% of the Icinga development is done at our company, at Netways. We do 90%, I would say. But we have others. Most of the work people outside the company is doing are ecosystems things, like Puppet and Ansible and Chef and Elastic and all this stuff around it. Because working in the core product means working in the Icinga 2 C++ core is hard to keep up with if you're not working with it on a daily basis, especially if you do larger feature sets. But everybody in the team is able to come back. To be honest, which is harder since most of the people work in the company, you sometimes have to push yourself to discuss to people who are not in the company. So if I'm seeing Asaf, which is not with Netways, sometimes it's hard for us to say, okay, we need to inform the others not working here, sitting beside me, that they have an idea what we are doing. But from the objectives we have, I would say, okay, that's hard to explain. With Icinga Web 1, if you remember that, Asaf showed it yesterday, it's horrible. We make that mistake that at one hand we are a service company, and then customers come up and that I need that module. I pay you whatever amount of money, please do it. And we said, yeah, great, we do it. And then after some time, we had 4 modules doing exactly the same in a little bit different way, but all of them were shitty. And then we decided, okay, if we do it that way, that the customer forces us where the product strategy should go to, then we end up with a mess of various modules nobody can maintain and nobody will update. And therefore, we don't do it anymore. So we try to figure out what the users outside want. So the users drive us, that our customers, but also customers from partners, they come with input. And it's more a community-driven project. So we don't have our own agenda going further than perhaps a year. So we think this is the most important thing to do right now. In Icinga is replacing IDO at the moment. This is what we do, because IDO is horrible. If you have a large environment, it doesn't scale. And this is something we're working on right now. And then we perhaps do reporting. It's also the third version of reporting we do. But we don't know what's coming after that. So it means the community drives it, the parts of the Icinga members, and I would say in their opinion and their ideas, they are kind of equal, I would say. I don't know if that was a good answer to your question.
Bill, that certainly explains the problem.
Yeah, it's hard. So, but we try that really everybody has a chance to bring his idea, and if it's valuable, if it makes sense, we try to do it. But we not try to focus too much on a specific customer, which is really hard because there's the money usually, and so we have to make some money because we don't sell the software. But this is something we had to learn, and we failed hard on that the balance between a service and a product company is very hard, because with service you can't do everything for the money, but this kills your product. And this is we still struggle with that, but I think we do better now.
Great talk, by the way, thanks.
Thank you.
My question is, if somebody breaches the code of conduct,
Yeah.
do you think it's better to deal with it privately so they're not sort of, shamed in front of everybody else? Or is it better to deal with it publicly and therefore everybody can see that you're enforcing the code of conduct? Because if you have a quiet word with them separately, everybody who's seen that breach doesn't know that you've dealt with it.
I call. I'm an old fart. I call. I take the telephone. Say, what do you have? What is the background of that? Because I hate it if you have these mail threads back and forth, like 20 mails, and at the end you don't know where it all starts. So usually, if I'm unhappy with something, and I passed over that job from the community lead to Michael Friedrich last year. But what I did, if I'm not happy in the project, at work, and with anything else, I pick up the phone and call somebody, because then I have the best idea what is the reason for a specific behavior. Sometimes it's the reason for the behavior doesn't mean that the behavior is accepted, but it gives you a better understanding what happens before. And sometimes perhaps the thing you see as a code of conduct violation is just there's like the top of an iceberg. And that is the reason why I usually try to call, because everything else, in my personal opinion, consumes too much time, and taking the telephone is the most efficient way to figure something out. That is how I deal with it, because I try to not do it in the public, because it makes it usually even more worse, because then people jump in, have nothing to do with it. It's like every time a shitstorm coming up on the internet, I don't know, what's the latest thing? Uber, for example. They do bad, of course. But then thousands of people say, I uninstalled Uber and they never used it. I know a lot of people in Germany, and we don't have Uber in Germany, and I uninstalled Uber. Have you ever been to the States? No. Have you ever used Uber? No, but it sucks. They have no idea. Of course the company culture sucks. But if you talk about code of conduct or such kind of things, so everybody jumps on and says, that's so bad, but they have no idea. And therefore I try to do it to prevent that doing it in the public, if that makes sense in some way. Any more questions? Thank you again. Have a great day.